Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, after days of denials, Ukraine's pro-Russian separatists now say they probably have recovered the black box from the downed Malaysia Airlines flight MH17. Korea's rival parties are expected to lock horns over a special bill on April's ferry disaster when the National Assembly opens its extraordinary session for the month of July on this Monday. Plus, more than 100 are killed in Gaza and Israel on Sunday as fighting there intensifies. Hospitals are overwhelmed following Israel's bombardment of a residential area in Gaza. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, July 21st here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine say they've recovered an object from the crash site that's believed to be the plane's black box. Scores of bodies have also been loaded onto trains where they'll be kept in refrigerated carriages until international experts arrive. Sohn Jung-in reports.
The footage shows rescue workers holding an orange-colored device as they walk through a wheat field in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region. One worker calls out the words flight recorder in Russian while carrying what appears to be the black box that records a plane's movements and cockpit voices.
We found a key element of the plane. We presume it is the black box.
Borodai said the device is now being stored in Donetsk, and they are ready to hand it to the International Civil Aviation Organization.
We are keeping the black box in Donetsk. We are waiting for international civil aviation representatives to arrive.
The Prime Minister also said the bodies recovered from the crash site will remain in refrigerated containers at a train station in the town of Torres until the officials arrive. Meanwhile, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin that he needs to show he's serious about helping rescuers recover the bodies.
President Putin has the last chance to show the world that he is willing to help.
Malaysia Airlines has released a full list of 298 passengers from 11 countries that were on board the plane, including nearly 200 from the Netherlands, 43 Malaysians, and 27 Australians. At least 6 of the passengers were heading to Melbourne to attend the 20th International AIDS Conference, including world-renowned scholars and a media officer for the World Health Organization. Sohn Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now back here in Korea, the National Assembly opens its extraordinary session for the month of July on this Monday, and the ruling and opposition sides are expected to continue to lock horns over a special bill on April's ferry disaster. The rival parties who had previously set July 16th as the date to pass the bill failed to resume negotiations on narrowing their differences over the weekend. The floor leaders of the two sides will attempt to break the impasse at their weekly meeting later on this Monday morning, 11 a.m. Korea time. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, wants the probe committee contained in the bill to be given investigative authority, while the ruling Saenuri party opposes that. 3 opposition lawmakers have joined the families of the ferry disaster victims in a hunger strike in front of the National Assembly, calling for a swift passage of the bill. South Korea and China have reached consensus on establishing a military hotline following last year's discussions between the defense chiefs of the two nations. A South Korean government source who declined to be named told Seoul-based Yonhap news agency that the goal is to have this hotline set up before the end of the year. A final decision on the specific timeline is likely to be announced after their 4th strategic defense dialogue. This dialogue, to be held in China on Tuesday, will be led by Korean Vice Defense Minister Baek Seung-ju and China's Deputy Chief of General Staff of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. If established, China will become the second country after the US with which South Korea has a hotline between defense chiefs. Now, staying with the Defense Ministry, and South Korea's new Defense Minister, Han Min-gu, has warned North Korea Seoul will retaliate against any future provocations without reservations. In a televised interview on Sunday, Han said the South Korean military will launch an immediate counterattack to any North Korean provocation, adding that Seoul will not only target the source of the provocation, but also commanders and supporting forces. The South Korean Defense Minister continued by saying that Pyongyang's recent missile launches were aimed at creating internal strife right here in South Korea and to change Seoul's North Korea policy. Meanwhile, Han and his US counterpart, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, held their first phone conversation over the weekend. The two discussed the two countries' bilateral alliance. Han and Hagel will dig deeper into this topic in October during an annual round of defense minister talks in Washington. US Secretary of State John Kerry says Washington's diplomatic engagement with Beijing over the North Korean nuclear issue has kept Pyongyang, quote-unquote, quieter in recent months. Appearing on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, Kerry said cooperation with China since his visit to the country last year hasn't really led to the expected goals in regards to Pyongyang's denuclearization, but they are moving forward in that respect. Kerry's remarks likely reflect the fact the North didn't conduct a fourth nuclear test as it had threatened earlier this year, and that it hasn't launched any long-range missiles as of late. The UN Security Council last week, however, condemned Pyongyang's recent series of short-range missile tests towards the East Sea off the Korean peninsula. Now, North Korea has been sending rather mixed signals to South Korea, test-firing missiles one day and proposing talks the next. Now, this has many pundits wondering whether this is a new tactic under Kim Jong-un, and they're wondering how we should assess North Korea's latest actions. Well, our Hwang Sang-yi posed that and other questions to Robert Carlin, a former US State Department official dealing mostly with North Korea.
The North Koreans will never be one thing or the other. And here's the difference. Up until the point at which negotiations actually start, you'll see both streams going side by side. Once negotiations start, you'll see much less, and in some cases none at all, of these what we consider provocative actions.
You've also been holding informal talks with North Korea. Do you see any changes in perhaps their willingness to engage?
As far as you can judge, they really keep trying to figure out what it would take to get a positive response from the United States. So I don't think there's been a shift. I think they're just frustrated because they think they can't get traction.
We see China and South Korea getting close together, and on the other part, we see Japan and North Korea getting closer together. How do you assess that?
And also the Russians and the Americans not being on very good terms. It looks pretty dismal, the landscape, for putting this back together again in any way that it can be productive. So I suspect that people are going to have to think about a new forum in order to overcome these really negative trends.
So if Prime Minister Abe does visit North Korea, how will that affect the trilateral alliance between Washington, Seoul, and Tokyo?
If it were to happen tomorrow, let's say, I think it would be a shock. If it happens some point in the future after different capitals are able to consult and people get more comfortable, maybe it won't be quite as negative.
Do you think it will harm the trilateral cooperation at all?
I think it will. I think there'll be an effort to pretend that it doesn't, but in truth, I think it will be something that people will have to work very hard at to fix.
How likely is it for us to see Kim Jong-un meet with Xi Jinping or Prime Minister Abe?
I would bet that he would meet with Prime Minister Abe before he meets with Xi Jinping. It's just my sense that that's liable to happen first. Yeah.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now on to some economic news, and Korea's new finance minister is expected to provide a stronger direction for the Korean economy. Pundits say Choi Kyung-hwan's comments over the weekend offered a glimpse at what he has in store for us. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Reforms, including deregulation, are key to jump-starting the nation's economy. Those were the words spoken by Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan, appointed last week. In this spirit, Choi offered a number of proposals to boost investment, including tax breaks for small and mid-sized companies, or SMEs, using an accounting method called accelerated depreciation. It involves depreciating an asset at a faster rate early on in that asset's life to help reduce a company's taxable income by deferring the tax to later years. Also, Choi said he would work to remodel industrial complexes to encourage more young employees to work for the SMEs therein. Choi said he would work with related ministries to restore worn-out facilities and improve life for residents there.
I want to improve the facilities to make it easier for young people to want to work and live here.
To boost the property market, Choi promised to ease regulations for home buyers. The government eased the debt-to-income ratio and loan-to-value ratio. They limit the amount that prospective buyers can borrow from banks based on various economic indicators, including income. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, we're smack bang in the middle of monsoon season here in Korea. However, you wouldn't really know it by looking out of your nearest window. Rain has been very hard to come by so far this summer, in the central region at least, and that's had an effect on the buying habits of Koreans. Our Connie Kim reports.
The monsoon period here in Korea, which usually falls from late June to late July, is when the nation receives about 40% of its precipitation for the whole year. But weaker than normal atmospheric pressure from the North Pacific has made for dry conditions so far this summer, and it's had a direct effect on consumer spending.
Rain boots and umbrellas are usually flying off the shelves by now, but not this year.
Our sales have been dominated more by people going on vacation this year. Folding tables and camping-related items have been quite popular.
Sales of leisure or folding tables have jumped the most among all summer products, followed by camping and barbecue gear. It's a sign that consumers are adjusting to the abnormally dry weather conditions. Some 400 millimeters of rain fell on Seoul from July 1st to the 15th last year, while just 23.5 millimeters has fallen this year. As such, less people are buying rain boots, umbrellas, and other rain-related products, including dehumidifiers, which have been affected the most among all electric items. The retail industry has also had to adjust its marketing strategies.
Compared to last year, we aren't featuring dehumidifiers or clothing that usually sells well during the monsoon period. We've cut out our coverage of these items by about 20 to 30%.
Instead, they're promoting more vacation-related products, which have enjoyed a sales boom 2 to 3 weeks earlier than normal. Industry insiders say some retail shops have already started focusing on their upcoming fall products, as the monsoon season isn't forecast to be as severe as in years past. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, in some tech news, local researchers have developed a device that can detect super high-energy cosmic rays. Now, this invention could help raise Korea's global status in the space industry. Our Paulie explains.
This 1 square meter particle detector, made up of 2,500 semiconductor wafers piled up in 4 layers, is what's called a cosmic ray detector. Local university researchers came up with the idea for the design and have since developed it using domestic technology. It's expected to measure the charged constitution of cosmic rays with unprecedented accuracy.
Cosmic rays that arrive on Earth can be made up of any kind of atomic nucleus, be it of hydrogen, oxygen, carbon. Our detector will sort the elements with 99% accuracy.
The cosmic rays that contain super high energy cannot be produced on Earth and were first discovered in 1912. They are presumed to come from supernova explosions within the Milky Way galaxy, but they remain a mystery by and large.
How these particles achieve these so high energies? In other words, how do cosmic accelerators work? Is the main question. One of the big mysteries in astrophysics, and that's what we are trying to understand.
The cosmic ray detector has now been transferred to NASA for a final checkup before it is sent to the International Space Station for 3 years to analyze elements of the rays. It will represent the first locally developed instrument to be installed on the ISS, and Korea hopes that raises its global status in the space industry. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through some of the other international headlines we're following on this Monday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The deadliest day so far in the conflict between Israeli and Hamas forces in the Middle East. Backed by tanks and warplanes, Israeli troops escalated their ground offensive, unleashing fire on a crowded Gaza City neighborhood on Sunday. At least 60 Palestinians were killed there in what Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas characterized as a massacre. Thousands were forced to flee to take refuge in UN schools and elsewhere. The United Nations says more than 83,000 Gazans are now displaced. Mounting casualties is straining Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital, where authorities say more than 90% of the medicine was used in the first 10 or 11 days of the war and is now facing crisis-level shortages of medical supplies. It was a deadly day for the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as 13 of their own were killed in an ambush, all members of the Golani Brigade. Sunday's hit brings the total number of Israeli soldiers killed in the offensive to 18. There are also early reports that Hamas militants have captured an Israeli soldier, and despite the casualties, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to continue the offensive, quote, as much as we need to, blaming Hamas for the escalation in Gaza. Tripoli International Airport continues to be the site of rival militia fighting. Sunday's struggle killed at least 4 people and caused thousands of nearby residents to flee their homes. It marks the most serious violence in the Syrian capital city since the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, pitting the Zintan fighters defending its control of the air hub and its allies against groups tied to the western coastal town of Misrata, armed with Grad missiles, rockets, and anti-aircraft weaponry. A doctor from a local hospital said it received 9 wounded from the area, and just days earlier, one powerful militia had said it was ready to put an end to the heavy clashes riddling the oil-producing North African state. Typhoon Monsoon continues to unleash havoc, this time in China, as its violent winds and deluge claimed the lives of 17 people. The storm regained strength over the South China Sea with winds exceeding 200 kilometers an hour. It killed 8 people on the island province of Hainan before reaching the mainland, where Chinese state media said 9 in Guangxi had died. This as the death toll in the Philippines following the storm has ballooned to 97. 6 are still missing. And finally, Forbes Media has sold a majority stake in its company to a Hong Kong-based group of international investors, this after 97 years of family ownership. Steve Forbes will remain as chairman and editor-in-chief after the sale to Integrated Whale Media Investments for an undisclosed sum goes through. Forbes said the sale of the company founded by his grandfather should be seen as an opportunity to continue and strengthen the company's mission.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team as the KFA announced that the team will play 6 more friendlies before the end of the year. Now, in preparations for the upcoming Asian Cup in Australia taking place in January, the KFA announced that the South Korean national football team will play 6 more times this year. They added that they'll play 2 matches per month from September to November. And according to an official at the KFA, the first 2 matches will be against South American nations, with Venezuela and Uruguay in talks for the September friendlies. Meanwhile, the KFA hopes to choose their next head coach before the friendlies begin. And staying with football, but over to some Sunday's K-League Classic action. The Pohang Steelers shut out Busan I-Park 2-0 to keep their first-place lead, while the Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors faced off against Hangju Sangmu. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now, of course, this match is a special match for Chae Sung, who had his retirement ceremony after 532 matches in the K-League, with each player on the Jeonbuk squad wearing 532 on their uniform. But once the match kicked off, it was another Jeonbuk legend who scores the first goal as Lee Dong-guk finds the back of the net in the 17th minute as Jeonbuk takes a 1-0 lead. And then the second half comes along and, hey, why don't we score a little bit more? 5 more goals being scored in the second half by Jeonbuk as they crush Sangju with the final score of 6-0. And now over to badminton, where all eyes were on Sung Ji-hyun of South Korea after Lee Yong-dae pulled out of the competition over on the men's mixed doubles due to an injury. And she didn't disappoint as she dominated in the finals of the Taiwan Open Grand Prix Gold, winning her second Taiwan Open title. That's the first title win of the season for her since winning the Asian Championships back in April. And now with that, moving over to golf, where the KLPGA Jeju Masters was highlighted by the presence of Park In-bi, who not only played well, but treated the fans with a little something special on the final day. The 26-year-old holding a 6-iron at par 3 third hole nails a hole-in-one, her first official hole-in-one of her career, leaving the fans in awe, as she would finish off the event tied for 4th after shooting a 10 under par overall. Meanwhile, it was the 9th-year Yoon Chae-young who won her first KLPGA title after finishing off the event at 11 under par overall for the emotional victory. And now finishing things off with the Open Championship, aka the PGA British Open, as Rory McIlroy dominated throughout the 4 rounds of the event, winning his 3rd major of his career. Despite Sergio Garcia storming through the final round, shooting a 6 under on the day, the 25-year-old from Northern Ireland keeps his composure and keeps his lead throughout the day to finish first with 17 under par overall to finish with the 2014 British Open title. Also with the win, Roy just needs a Masters win in order to complete a career Grand Slam, as he now has the other 3 majors already in the bag. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good Monday morning to you. I'm Lee with your weather update. Well, it's going to be a sweltering day today. Heat wave will continue to bake the whole peninsula, with afternoon highs are expected to soar upper to mid-30s across the nation. And a fair amount of sun will be shining down on us throughout the day. So with the sun, heat and humid, it's going to be a very hot day, and it's going to make you feel hotter than actual temperatures. And the heat wave advisory and warnings have been expanded in much of the country, so please keep that in mind. And let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 24, then the high will rise to 32, while Daegu will climb to 34, and Gwangju and Busan will have a daily high of 31 and 30 respectively. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju Island, Daejeon should see highs of 29 and 32. Dokdo should rise to 28, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 25. Well, don't forget to apply a good amount of sunblock and drink plenty of water to prevent heat stroke. Well, that's all for me at this hour, and I hope you have a wonderful start to the week.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in 30 minutes' time. We'll be back throughout the day with many more newscasts, and I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.